It was 1 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, 1945. The Sodder family was asleep in their two-story home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. 12 people were inside. 11 of them had just celebrated Christmas Eve together. One son was away, serving in the military. By sunrise, 5 of those children would never be seen again. No bodies were found. No remains. Not a single bone. The official cause of the fire was faulty wiring, but the Sodders never believed that. And the more you look at what happened that night, the harder it is to explain away. George Sodder was born Giorgio Soddu in Sardinia, Italy. He immigrated to the United States and built a life in West Virginia, working in coal mining and trucking. He married Jennie, and together they had 10 children. On Christmas Eve 1945, 9 of their children were at home. The oldest was 23. The youngest, Sylvia, was just 2 years old. The 5 in between were Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jennie, 8, and Betty, 5. They celebrated like any family would. Presents. Food. Laughter. Then around midnight, everyone went to bed. The 5 youngest children went to their rooms on the second floor. George and Jennie slept downstairs with baby Sylvia. But shortly after midnight, strange things began to happen. At 12:30 a.m., the phone rang. Jennie went downstairs to answer it. The caller asked for a name that wasn't anyone in the family, then hung up. A wrong number. Then, unexplained power outages. The lights in the house began flickering, going out, coming back on. Around 1 a.m., Jennie woke up again. She heard something hit the roof with a loud bang, then a rolling sound. She went back to sleep. 30 minutes later, she smelled smoke. She got up and found George's office, the room where the telephone line and fuse box were located, on fire. She woke George. George woke his older sons. Within minutes, the fire had spread through the downstairs. George broke a window to re-enter the house and slashed his arm open on the glass. He couldn't get back inside. The fire was too fast. George, Jennie, baby Sylvia, 17-year-old Marion, 23-year-old John, and 16-year-old George Jr. escaped. They stood outside and watched the house burn to the ground. The 5 youngest children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty, never came out. The volunteer fire department didn't arrive until hours later, well after sunrise. The fire chief later said the response was delayed because he couldn't drive the fire truck and had to wait for someone who could. By the time the fire department arrived, the house had collapsed into the basement. There was nothing left to save. On Christmas morning, a brief search of the rubble was conducted. The firefighters expected to find the remains of 5 children. They found nothing. No bones. No teeth. No skeletons. Fire Chief Morris told the Sodders that no remains had been found. Later, he would claim he had found some bone fragments and internal organs, but he never showed them to the family. An inquest was held the very next day, December 26. The verdict: the fire was an accident caused by faulty wiring. Among the jurors was a man who had previously threatened George Sodder. He had told George that his house would be burned down and his children destroyed, retaliation for George's outspoken criticism of Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. For days after the fire, George could not bear the sight any longer. He bulldozed 5 feet of dirt over the site and turned it into a memorial garden. Whatever evidence might have been buried in the basement was now buried deeper. The Sodders never accepted the official explanation. And when you look at the details, it's not hard to understand why. First, the ladder. George had a ladder leaning against the house near the children's second-floor windows. After the fire, it was found lying on the ground. Someone had moved it. Second, the phone. The line ran through the office where the fire started. That 12:30 a.m. wrong number call. Some believe it was a check, to confirm the family was home before the fire was set. Third, the fire's speed. The blaze spread impossibly fast through the downstairs. George had kept 55-gallon drums of gasoline in the basement for his trucking business. Fourth, the missing remains. Fire experts consulted years later said the blaze was not hot enough nor long enough to completely cremate 5 human bodies. Skeletons should have been found. They weren't. The Sodders believed their children were not killed in the fire. They believed the fire was a cover-up, and that the 5 children were kidnapped that night, taken out of the house before the flames consumed it. In 1952, the Sodders erected a billboard along Highway 19 near their property. It showed photographs of Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jennie, and Betty, and offered a $5,000 reward for information. The billboard stood for decades, a silent monument to a mystery that refused to die. 2 years after the fire, George saw a newspaper photo of school children in New York. He was certain one of them was his daughter Betty. He drove to Manhattan and demanded to see the girl. He was turned away. He never got confirmation. In 1949, the Sodders hired a pathologist to excavate the site. They found a few charred objects, coins, a dictionary, and several fragments of vertebrae. The bones were sent to the Smithsonian Institution, which concluded they showed no evidence of being exposed to fire. They were likely from the dirt George had used to fill the basement. The case was officially closed in 1950. No arrests. No charges. No answers. So what happened to the Sodder children? There are 2 main theories. The first theory involves organized crime. George Sodder was an outspoken critic of Mussolini. He publicly supported the Allied war effort against Italy. Some believe Mussolini loyalists or sympathizers in the United States targeted his family as revenge. If the children were kidnapped, who took them? And where did they go? The Sodders received letters over the years, some claiming to be the children, others claiming to know what happened. None were verified. The second theory is simpler: the children died in the fire, and the heat was sufficient, just barely, to destroy their remains. The few bone fragments that were found were dismissed or lost. But that theory doesn't explain the ladder. Or the phone call. Or the threat. Or the strangely fast fire. Or the juror who had threatened the family. George Sodder died in 1969. Jennie died in 1989. Neither ever gave up hope. The billboard remained until the 1990s, when it was finally taken down. Today, the case of the Sodder children remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. 5 children walked into their bedrooms on Christmas Eve and were never seen again. Whether they perished in the flames or were taken into the night, no one knows. What do you think happened? If you have a theory, leave it in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Shadow Case. Thanks for watching. See you in the next case.